All right, good. Well, listen, I'm so excited to have you on our show. I can't even tell you. Coach Chris Ayres is the head coach for Princeton Wrestling. And I just want to read a couple things to our listeners before we get into this, Coach, because, I know that your first few years at Princeton were pretty grueling. And as a matter of fact, the first 2 years, you had a 0-35 record, and that's ultimately the program you inherited.
Yeah.
But in the last 4 years, I just want to read this off so people know what you've been able to do. You won the Ivy League title in 2020 for the first time since 1986, ending Cornell's 92-match and 18-year Ivy League winning streak. Placed 15th in 2019 NCAA. And obviously, we had this championship season that was just cut short, but you've had programs with 3 All-Americans, with Patrick Bruckey, Patrick Glory, Matthew Kolodzik, and I've been following these guys for a while. Your program earned 1 bid to the NCAAs from 2004 to 2009, but followed by 38 bids to the NCAAs in the last 10 years. 8 top 25 finishes at the NCAAs. 2017, you sent 7 to the NCAA championship, which was a program record. 2016 to 2020, placed in the top 5 in the EIWAs annually. You took 3rd in 2017, 18, and 19. And I honestly thought you were going to take 1st in 2019. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Won 8 individual EIWA titles. I can go on and on.
Yeah.
But you were the co-coach of the year in 2017. And honestly, it's awesome. What I love about the Princeton program is what it says right on your Twitter, which is working on the greatest college athletic program turnaround of all time. So I kind of want to start there and let people know that when you came, even when you started wrestling young, like I started when I was 7, I think you started when you were 8 or 9?
Yeah, actually 4th grade. But I was that's when it started, because that was the school rule, it was 4th grade, and it was a school program where I lived. But I wanted to start in kindergarten. I used to beg the coach, hey, can I come wrestle every year? And he said, no, you got to be in 4th grade. And I wrestled with my cousins and stuff. But yeah, so 4th grade is when I started.
Well, that's awesome. And you played other sports too, or was this the one that you gravitated towards?
Yeah, I jumped around a little bit, and my interest in sports kind of jumped around as well. I played football and baseball. And the interesting thing was I was pretty good at both of those things until I hit high school, and I only weighed 100 pounds. So that kind of made me go into wrestling, and I was a freshman. I was sort of into it, and then I got really into it after my sophomore year. So I really got passionate about it late. I always worked hard, but it wasn't my only sport. I actually liked football the most, to be honest with you. Going through grammar school and up to freshman year, then I was just too small.
Well, and a lot of our listeners are obviously, they have young kids. I have young kids, 2 of them that even today, I mean, people should know if they're listening to this in 2022, that this is happening, right at the maybe hopefully the tail end of the COVID-19 pandemic. We've been dealing with this for a few months, but my kids the entire time have not stopped training for baseball. That's their sport. And, we were out today. We were on a field. There were 4 fields. We're on one field. We played for about an hour and a half. It's a pretty hot day out, and there was not one other person out there playing. And I'm trying to teach them the work ethic that it takes just to get better in anything. And when I was wrestling, when I was young, when I was their age, I didn't know you could do it year round. I mentioned just before we started the call, my father said, wrestling season starts in a week. So why don't you go out and jump rope and start getting ready? That's how it started for me and my brother. And we didn't even know it was an option, by the way. It was just like, you're wrestling. He just wanted us to be busy. But, I was an average wrestler. But to this day, I can tell you that I carry life lessons, which I think is why I'm a fan of the sport still to this day. But I carry life lessons that have stayed with me forever. And you could probably say the same, because I know you had a good high school career, but you never placed. And then you were a walk-on at Lehigh, and you end up being one of the best wrestlers that ever went through Lehigh program. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I don't know what it is about me. I I feel like on a long enough timeline, because I have a good work ethic, and I'm able to withstand some things. I have pretty good, what I'd call perseverance, um, that I just feel like I'm going to be successful at some point. And so it's happened really twice now. It happened in my athletic career, and also happened in my head coaching career. But yeah, in high school, what happened was I was kind of into it my freshman year. I always like won counties and stuff when I was in elementary school. Got into high school, I sort of was a freshman. You know, I used to be a hot shot. Now I'm a 100-pound freshman. And so, you know, I wasn't the hot shot anymore. That was a blow to my ego for sure. So I was kind of okay my freshman year. I was about 50, about 500. My sophomore year, I actually got hurt, and couldn't finish the season. But then my coach, you never know when something will impact an individual and change them. That thing for me was my coach took me to the Olympic trials that were in Philadelphia. And what happened was this guy named Sergei Beloglazov, he's a Russian actually, who actually moved to the United States, and he was coaching at Lehigh at the time. And what happened was he did a clinic, and he's arguably the best wrestler ever. I think he's a 7-time world and Olympic champion. He was doing a clinic, and he was doing things I didn't know you could do. Like the technique blew my mind.
Yeah.
And so I saw him, I swear, that was like the pivotal point for me, where I was like, I thought wrestling was a fireman's carry. You do a stand up to get out, and you run an arm bar or a cradle. I had maybe a few more techniques, but that's how simple my mind was. And then I saw this guy doing things, and he looked like an artist. So from that point on, when I saw him, I got so obsessed with the sport. I actually followed him around at clinics and stuff. By my senior year, I was very good. I was undefeated until the region finals, and I trained really, really hard. In my mind, I was like, I'm going to win the states. There's no doubt about it. I've done all the work. I was so confident. And then I lost. So I lost in the region finals in overtime or something along those lines. For some reason, it like ruined my world. And so then I had trouble continuing to compete. And I didn't place in the state. So long story short, I go to Lehigh. I went to Blair for a year. That was pretty transformative too. A lot of it was physical maturity. I was the same height then. I weighed 135. I got to college. I was an All-American at 157. So I really was physically, and I think I was mentally a little immature too, competitively. But then I got to Lehigh, and things started to finally click for me, especially from a competitive standpoint. Something I learned, and I still use it to this day. You can use it in business or life or whatever. You can do all the preparation. Nothing is owed to you when you step into the competitive ring, or in your case, into the fire. You have to be able to, that preparation allows you to have a chance to be great in competition. The mistake I was making in high school was I thought the preparation guaranteed the success. So when I wasn't successful, it shattered that whole thing. And you know what I did? I said, poor me. I said, I worked so hard and I didn't get this. That's crap. And I sort of threw in the towel a little bit. It was like a very immature. In college, that I got over that. So maybe because I lost a little bit more,
Right.
but I got used to wrestling back. But that's my biggest regret in my whole wrestling career was how I handled the postseason in high school. But it was the greatest learning moment. Like, no matter how much preparation, if you're a lawyer, you still got to go in the courtroom and compete. If you're a firefighter, you still got to run into the fire, and you got to figure out how to get the job done. And so that was the biggest thing I took. And I think that was the biggest change for me, was the physical maturity. And then also that competitiveness, like you got to compete, that allowed me to be very successful in college, where I was just okay in high school.
I love what you said there. I love how you said it doesn't guarantee a victory. It just gives you, ultimately, it just gives you a good chance.
Yes.
I know one of your mottos and a quote that I think your staff use regularly is "find a way to win." It's easier to find a way to win if you've done the work and you have the tools.
Yep.
You know. Now I'll tell you something interesting. See, the Edge Wrestling Club, I'm sure, the Monaco brothers. Well, I wrestled. My senior year was 1986, and that year my father gave me the opportunity to go wrestle at the club when it was in the basement of Ernie Monaco's house. So I'm one of the original probably 8 guys that are part of this club, and I don't think I belong there because everybody else was so much better. But so here I am in the room. I go there for the very first practice. Carl Monaco and John Monaco, who are both multiple-time state champions, are in the corner while we're wrestling in this little basement, the 6 or 8 of us. They're in the corner for about 45 straight minutes doing a single leg takedown over and over and over and over and over and over again on each other. And I'm thinking in my head at the time, now Carl was my weight class, by the way. And Carl was kind of like your assistant coach, Joe Dubuque. He struck fear in people, But I'm thinking in my head, why is he over there wasting his time doing this simple, basic move when he's one of the best takedown artists in the state at that time? And you talk about not being mature enough. I didn't have the maturity to think that's why he's one of the best, because he's doing it and doing it and doing it. And I live down here, in Toms River, and we have another wrestling club down here that you'd be familiar with the Rivera family and Frankie Edgar. And, I brought my kids there early on when they were wrestling, and I see the same thing. It's a lot of the same stuff over and over and over again. I'm sure you're familiar with all these clubs. I'm sure you got relationships with all these guys.
I love Steve. He's awesome.
Steve is a great guy.
He's awesome.
He's a great guy. And what his son did, I want to talk about because I put his son in a category that I guess I would with Kolodzik, where I think both of them had a really good chance. Actually, let's talk about it now. Here we are. We are in the 2019 season leading into 2020. We're a week away from the NCAAs, maybe 2 weeks. COVID-19 hits, and they shut sports down. Steve Rivera's son, Sebastian's ranked number 1 in the country, just beat a couple returning national champions. Matthew Kolodzik is definitely a front runner. He was on a red shirt, right? He came out of that, I guess, to help the team because you had an injury.
Yep.
And he's a senior, right? So he won't have a chance to compete again. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, we put in a waiver in the NCAA for hardship, but it's probably. I mean, I'm tampering my expectations by saying it's unlikely. So if it happens, it's a big celebration. But we'll see what happens. But we're trying to get him his year back.
I hope you do. I mean, because what a great wrestler. I mean, I've loved watching him wrestle. So just very tough. He guts out the matches. It's outstanding. But what appeals to me about this story, again, is the life lessons you learn and the character you build, to where he could have just sat it out and said, you know what, I'm just going to come back in 2020. But he chose not to. And can you talk a little bit about how that all went down?
Yeah, so it was pretty – I love my team. We just were on – I had to leave early. We were on a call with our whole team in relation to, what's going on with the civil unrest right now in the rest of the country. So I love these guys. But, this is another example with Kolodzik and really Mike D'Angelo. So Mike D'Angelo was ranked in the nation. He had won the Princeton Open. He was an NCAA qualifier. His dream's to be an All-American. He was having some shoulder issues, popped out at Midlands. And then, he was kind of doing good. We were going to sit him, but he was like, man, I got to get out there. My senior year, so we go to UNC. He gets into a scramble against NC State. As a coach, I regret wrestling him, but it's one of those things. Gets into a scramble, pops his shoulder out again. So now we have this situation where Mike actually, it's not over yet, right? So this is where it gets interesting. So we go back, and we don't really know what's going to happen. And I just feel like this thing has happened twice. We're in a bad place. Kolodzik's sitting. He's beaten a lot of the top 10 guys I think he beat 4 of the top 10 guys. So we're looking at it. We're going, yeah, Kolodzic could win it. So for D'Angelo, he didn't really know what his situation was, but we had a conversation. I said, do you think you can get what you want? Do you think you can be an All-American? And he's like, I don't know if I can. He's like, but we have no other option. And this is the exact. And I said, we actually do have another option. And I said, Kolodzic. And I said, here's the deal, Mike. If you say that you're going to make it, you're going to do, if you say you want this chance at the end of the year and you're going to do everything you can to get this chance and you think you can get what you want, that's what's important. We're with you 100%, but know that Kolodic's in the sidelines. He said, I want what's best for the team. I think it's a long shot for me to make it to NCAAs in place with my shoulder. I think Kolodic should come out. So now we've got, I actually don't know if I've ever told this story publicly. So now we have Kolodic. Now I'm going to bring him in. He doesn't know what we're going to talk about. Now Kolodic too has spent the whole year. He's had a great year. Okay. Mm-hmm. And he's really good. Like, but he could design his own training basically, but he was with Reese in our RTC. So he was having a phenomenal year, getting better. So I pull him in and I talked to the staff and I said to the staff, I said, no way Kolodic's going to come back. Right. So just because we really have, we can't even send him to the next match, which is Harvard and Brown, because he's got to get more matches at a tournament so he can get ranked, so he can earn the conference a spot. So even in the first set of matches, we sent him to wrestle unattached at a tournament. Anyway, I pulled Matthew in. I said, hey, Matthew, we set out with this plan for you to take this Olympic year. You got this last chance qualifier coming up. I said, here's the deal for you. If you say no to this, I'm all with you. I'm not telling you to do this. I just want you to know this option exists. I said, Mikey D hurt his shoulder. He's willing to sort of step aside to allow you to come in and finish the year. And I also said, you look at the guys that are ranked right now. I think you could win an NCAA title as well. What do you think? And I swear I thought he'd be like, well, let me go think about this. Or he goes, let's do it. So it was a really interesting thing on both sides to see one kid give up his career. Really, I mean, we would have stuck with Mikey D. If he said, I'm going to try to do this, we would have hung in with him. He had to get surgery. In the end, it was bad. He had to get surgery. Yeah. And then on the other side, we have Kolodzik, who's taking his whole year. He hasn't been with the team, essentially hasn't traveled, nothing. And we're asking him to cut his season really more than 3/4, just eliminate it. And, he says for the team and for the opportunity to win NCAAs, he says, let's do it. So I was really proud. There's really 2 good examples of guys making sacrifices for really the betterment of our team. And I kind of put this picture in the back. That's us winning the Ivy League title. And you could see D'Angelo is actually holding the Ivy League title, and to this shoulder, there's Matthew and Glory. So pretty cool. Like that's what I think about. And Mikey could have got an extra year, but he's got it. He's doing good with like his job options and stuff. He said, you know what, I'm good with what I did. We won the Ivies. I had a lot to do with that. He's like, I'm good. And so that made me feel real good about our decision and then where he stands, because he was a huge impact on this program. So that's how we got to Kolodzik wrestling at the end of the year.
Well, yeah, thank you for sharing all that. I have to tell you something that I thought was, because we're talking about Kolodzik, you can't talk about Kolodzik without talking about Kolodzik versus Ashnault and the battles that those guys have had. Amazing battle, really, honestly. Like anytime you guys got together and wrestled against Rutgers, I thought, first of all, who from New Jersey would not want to see this match? Everybody wants to see it. But what's interesting is in the last one, I want to tell people the story. I know that you were saying that you felt that Ashnault was not going to score 1 point on Kolodzik.
Let me clear this up. Because it's been construed a little differently. Okay. And I almost was right, even though he got the back points. I said that Ashnault would not take him down. Okay?
Yes.
So
yes,
to be clear. Let's be clear.
But here's the part that I want to get to. He ends up scoring 10 points. and of course he gives the infamous, to you.
Yeah.
But what I like about this was that on the next day, I guess you were at a wrestling clinic or something with a little kid, and he does that to you, and then you
Yeah.
take the picture of him doing it and you post it, which I honestly, I screenshotted that, sent it to a couple of friends of mine whose kids wrestle, and I say, man, this coach seems really cool. And that was just a great moment that you said.
Yeah.
It's just,
It,
it's a family. It's a wrestling family. And I know sometimes it gets heated, but at the end of the day, I like that. I really appreciated that.
here's the thing. I love it, man. I love that Ashnault did that. I love that. I don't love that Colo didn't win. I mean, obviously, I hate that, but I love that little kid came in the next day. He's actually my son's best friend. That kid that did this, he's my son's best friend. So he came in right away. And we were running practice. He gave 10. It's all good, man. I mean, like, wrestling, it's getting better. Used to be this thing like, hey, we're going to keep it a secret. This is our secret little club, and we're going to be tough, and we're not going to let anyone in on it, and we're not going to have any fun at all. It's going to be, it's going to be this miserable thing, and if you can endure it, then good for you. But if not, then you're not in it. So I think with what we try to do, if you follow our social media, is honestly, we try to have fun. And also we just try to highlight our program and our guys. And it's just silly to not, what can you do for wrestling? How can you grow wrestling? How can you grow anything? How can you grow your company? You got to put yourself out there. You got to work hard. We have a promotion schedule that's long, where we have something every day. And we go into that, and we have to have new ideas. We got to figure it out. But we post pretty much every single day. We have some content that we're putting up. But that's what wrestling needs. Like, I mean, it needs Anthony Ashnault doing that.
Well, that's the thing about the Ashnault and Matthew about them. I mean, at the time, they are the number 1 and the number 2 ranked wrestlers in the country. And here they are from Princeton and Rutgers. And how could you not be proud of that? Of what you're building with your program. You got Pat Glory. I mean, you got some studs right now. And that's actually where I want to go with this conversation is, again, forging this winning culture.
Yeah.
And how you got there. One of the reasons I would assume is bringing in your staff like Joe, the original exotic Joe, I guess we'll call him.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, Joe Dubuque, he loves wrestling. Now, I'm familiar with his name, obviously, being a wrestler from New Jersey as well, because here's a 2-time NCAA champion from our state. But also he's posting on social media last week his young son wrestling with his wife in the garage for 30 minutes. You probably saw all that. So, but talk about your staff. Let's talk about the staff you pulled together, and I guess we'll start there.
And more generally, I think that people ask me a lot. I get this question all the time. You brought up at the beginning of the conversation, you're 0-35, and really, I think it will be, when we're said and done, it'll be the greatest athletic college turnaround in history. How'd you do it? Or how did you do it? The main thing is, like, I don't really think I did it. It's we did it. It's people. That's the main thing you need in the organization. The problem was my first year was I had 1 assistant coach, and I could have had 3 is the allotment for the NCAA. And, you need 3 coaches. I only had 1. How do I get 3 coaches? Well, I need money. So I got to go get support from my AD to let me go get the money. So I got to pull him in, and he's got to be my friend, and we got to work on it. Then I got to reach out to, a bunch of alumni. For Joe's position, we had to raise $1 million. And that's how it works at Princeton. You have to endow the position. So we raised $1 million in 1 year to hire Joe Dubuque. And so our staff was the first people, along with our alumni base, that helped us get to where we are. Really started with Sean Gray. Even going back to Andy Lozier, who's now the head coach at Davidson. He was a D3 head coach who took an assistant coach in D1 because he wanted to be part of D1. We really kind of built this together. The first phase of this, and a lot of stuff that he did is still in our program. The staff we have now, it's the all-star team. I mean, Sean Gray was associate head coach up at BU. He was a two-time All-American at Virginia Tech. We actually wrestled together at Blair. He was a freshman and I was a PG. So brought Sean in, another Jersey guy. We got the second assistant funded. So we started to bring in better volunteer assistants, not second assistant, volunteer assistants. So that's where we got Heflin, which eventually became Nate Jackson. And then we hired Joe Dubuque. So Joe Dubuque came right after Sean Gray. So we went from a staff of 2 to a staff of 4, and 4 of the best coaches in the country. Let's make no mistake about it. Joe Dubuque is an associate head coach. That's his title. Sean Gray is an associate head coach. That's his title. They should be head coaches. I hate saying that because someone's going to, snatch them up. But what our situation is we have 3 head coaches. Why is it good? We challenge each other. They don't just look to me and listen to what I say. If they don't like what I say, we have a conversation about it. It's one of the best things I think about our staff is like, they'll tell me, hey, you're wrong. We think you're wrong. And I'll be like, okay, let's have a courageous conversation about it and see what's right. And so I love that piece of our staff, how we just interact. We have a good interaction. So the staff is amazing, but that's our culture too. I just want to bring up one thing that we believe, that I believe it's my style, I think, and it's kind of what's been set into our program. So I'm the head coach, whatever. It's not a dictatorship. It's a partnership with all of our guys. If someone's just waiting for you to tell them what to do, I mean, that's just the worst. And I just don't think that person can be effective to their peak. What it has to be is a back and forth. It has to be a partnership. Yeah. And so we've had some situations where it wasn't a partnership in some areas. I don't want to get into details, and it didn't work. It just wasn't working. And so that person wouldn't fit in our organization. And so the kids, I hope the kids know that they have a voice. And our captain, Pat Bruckey, we kind of joke because we have this environment. He'll come in and give us talking tos, as an athlete, say, hey, you guys need to be better at this thing. And so that comes from the staff. I think we show that by example. We're willing to listen and work with people, and we do it with each other too. And so first thing was setting that staff really, and then how we interact with each other, I think builds the program for sure.
I love that. I love how you talked about courageous communication. It's something I talk about as well in my books and seminars, where I say dialogue, discussion, and debate. That's how you solve real problems. And that has to start with respect. And you mentioned the civil unrest that's happening in the country right now. And one word, I have 60,000 people that follow my one social media page, Step Up and Lead. And I basically said, I was talking about respect, saying it all has to start with respect. And I asked people if they agree with that, if you can respect the opposing point of view, even if it's not yours, just write the word respect, nothing else. And hundreds of people are just writing that word respect. And then you can have the courageous conversations if you know there's respect. And here's another thing. I mean, it makes no sense for anybody in a leadership position to surround themselves with yes men, right? Because if 2 of you agree on everything, one of you is just not necessary, right? Yeah. But if you could put your ego aside, I love what you're saying, and you can have your captain or one of the other coaches come up to you and say, hey, I think you're wrong here. That's a beautiful thing. So I'm glad you have that. Now, take me through what it's like in your practice room, in your wrestling room. Is it is it something where everybody just comes in, you get to work? Does somebody get up and say a few words? Do you have a certain format that you use that you think works? And don't give away any secrets now.
Yeah, no, I'll keep the secrets under wrap. But generally, the beginning of practice. So it's about communication, where sometimes I fall short. So it's pretty funny. We have a lot of, there's 32 kids on our team. We probably, at any given time, we're probably recruiting 50 kids between 2 classes. You have parents. So the circle gets very large. So sometimes communication, this one-to-one can be lacking. So we try to do that as much as we can, but sometimes we miss the boat. But in general, every day we'll say something at the beginning of practice. They get a practice plan every week on Saturday or Sunday, so they know what the week's going to look like. I think that communication is really important. My coach wasn't that good at that, and it bothered me because I didn't know how I needed to prepare mentally for the week, and I didn't get that. So it's like I kind of walked into practice, and then it was like, okay, guys, today we're doing, and then it was like, man, I don't know. Okay, now I got to get mentally ready for that. But when I send the plan out to the guys, it has not a lot of detail, but they have a pretty good idea of how hard it's going to be.
Right.
And so then they can sort of prepare their week as well and their minds for those hard practices. They come in, this was a funny thing. I was like the stickler for time because my coach was a stickler for time. If you weren't on the bus on time, he'd leave and you'd have to find your way to get to the bus. So I kind of took that with me. So when I first came to Princeton, classes end at 4:30, practice starts at 4:40. And I would get infuriated because at 4:42, 4:41, and now I'm pissed during practice because two guys are late and it throws me off. And at some point in my second or third year, I just started asking him, I'm like, why are you so late? He's like, well, coach, I'm all the way over there at campus. The lab finishes. A lot of times my professor keeps me after. I got here as quick as I could. You could see I'm sweating. So what happened is I just got flexible, and I was like, we started around 4:40. And so that was a weird thing for me to adapt to them. I mean, everyone's funny about the time thing. There's even in our youth club, there's a coach that calls it Lombardi time. Like you got to be 5 minutes early. Our guys just couldn't make it. Like that was the problem. It wasn't like they're blatantly being late. They go to Princeton. They're Ivy League kids. They're type A totally, but they're trying to get there. They just can't do it. So we got totally lax. So we start around 4:40. I generally talk to them about what the practice is going to look like. Now it gets a little more specific. They have a general idea coming in. Now it gets specific. I might have made an adjustment. They might have looked tired. I might say, I'm way pulling back today. I never really ramp it up more. I sort of want them to know what to expect that way. Then they warm up on their own, and then the rest is pretty structured depending on what time of year it is and how long it is, and what we're focused on is also dependent upon the year. Generally do some drilling, and then the live has a lot of variation. So it's a pretty standard, practice is what I'd say in D1. I think that the art of it and the genius, I shouldn't say genius, I'm not saying I'm a genius, but I think where you see the results is the plan. So basically the year plan, not specifically that practice, but how you plan each week, how you make adjustments. And so that's, it's good to know what your strengths are. I think that's what I'm good at. I'm not an on the fly guy. Pat Santoro, the head coach at Lehigh, he's very good feel is what he'd call it. Where's the team at feel? I'm not great at that. So I have a plan, and then to get a feel, I have them fill out a questionnaire every day. It takes about 3 seconds. Just kind of gives me a blue, mentally where are you at? Are you hydrated? How sore are you? And then I get that feedback every day before practice, and that's how I make my adjustments. So I'm not a field guy. So anyway, I think it's a pretty standard practice schedule.
All right, that's great. And, I was listening to a Special Forces and Navy SEAL speak not too long ago. And one of the things that he talked about was why the Navy SEALs are so good. And he talked about how they practice, how they train. They train, because you're going to play the way you practice. But one of the things he said that I found interesting, and we know this because he said one of the reasons they're so good is the selection process. You don't just say I want to be a Navy SEAL. Next thing you're a Navy SEAL. Just like you don't say I'm going to be a Princeton wrestler. Next thing you know, you're a Princeton wrestler. It's a process. What do you look for in a recruit? Obviously, you look for great wrestlers, but what is like the character, the personality, the type of kid that you're looking for? Do you like kids that play other sports? Do you like kids that are great academically? What is it?
Yeah. So this is a great question. I get this all the time. We don't have the luxury of like picking a certain type of kid. we recruit a transcript. I mean, Princeton's the hardest school to get into in the country. So first things first, in order for us to look at you, you have to be great at wrestling and you have to have a great transcript. So like I said, we're probably recruiting 50 people. So we have about 25 guys in each class that fit that bill out of the whole country. So, but the good thing is, hey, the kid has straight A's and he's a great wrestler. Do you think that kid has some good character traits? Probably. So the process, it works itself out for us. Our kids are awesome. I mean, like, I have the best. I don't get calls at 12 a.m. or 2 a.m. That doesn't happen for me. Our kids they have super high goals in wrestling, and they're pushing themselves to be the best in academics as well, and be the best for the rest of their life. So for me, I have an interesting luxury where, no one's walking in my office and saying, hey, I got 3 Fs, I'm ineligible. That just doesn't happen. Yeah. So the process, how tough the admissions is and how tough the wrestling is gives us great kids.
Yeah, that's great insight, actually.
So for me, it's like, that's the easy. It's hard because it's a small pool, but it's also, we know what we're getting. Right. And quite frankly, we really haven't gotten a bad kid or some kid we're like, how did we recruit this guy, right? Like, what were we thinking? It just, the process weeds out the kids that aren't going to be positive or have those positive character traits.
Let me ask you this, Coach. How do you take a wrestler, just take Pat Glory, great wrestler? I would think, and I don't like to say things like this being on the outside, but I mean, he's a kid that I would think is going to win a national championship at some point. He has everything he needs to do that. And hopefully, I'm hoping he does it at some point.
Yeah.
But if he loses, and he's lost matches like everybody does, but if he loses a close match, a tough match, a heartbreaking match, what do you say to him? What do you say to Matthew? What do you say to any of your wrestlers that lost the match to try to get them to put it in perspective?
Hey, losses are opportunity. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Usually, so every person's different, and you gotta feel where they are. Talking to Matthew's way different after a loss than talking to Glory. I don't want to get into their specific, but I know how to handle each one. So when you take it, the opportunity exists in the loss because their ears are open. When they're always winning, it's like you could sort of say in a match that maybe something went wrong. You could say, hey, we could work on this a little bit bigger, but that pain isn't there from a loss. Right. A loss will cause you to change because, hey, look, man, you got to fix something. It's time to fix something on a loss. And I think that, in life, that's also the case, right? Like, the losses often teach you way more than the wins. That's another thing for me personally is I look for the struggle. And I think that's a pretty different thing. I like, if you look at our schedule, it's on purpose. Our schedule is ridiculous. I mean, we spent one weekend where we wrestled at Oklahoma State, flew back and wrestled Iowa and Jadwin. We can learn a lot from that trip.
I remember that. I followed you.
So what happens? I think they're just really receptive to listening. Spencer Lee has made Pat Glory so good. So good.
He wrestled Spencer Lee so tough. Yeah. The second and third period were different than the first.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. But
the second match was a lot different than the first match too, where he got beat pretty quickly. In this match, if Pat would have had some more time, he might still be riding Spencer Lee. So
you mentioned Iowa. Iowa's a pretty I mean, they're tough, they're gritty. When you go in there, it's like you're going into war, right? Because the crowd. I mean, There's something about their culture that I find pretty interesting too. which is Spencer Lee, one of the greatest wrestlers, ever. I mean, would he win 2 national championships? Now, he'll lose a heartbreaking loss, but then he'll go shower, come back out, and here he is supporting his teammate, sitting in the front row. And then you see them line up supporting their teammates, even right after they lose. And I watch them, and I'm thinking, you know what? There's something there. They're a family. That group of wrestlers is definitely a family. And it seems like you have that too. Does that happen organically, or does that happen, just because of things that you're teaching them?
That's a really hard question. Well, I think it comes from the top. I think a lot of it is, and I think when you speak about Iowa, I think, yeah, it comes from the top for them too. I think the brands and everyone, it's what you're going to put into your guys. I think really is what makes it a family. They see what you give. They want to give back to you. It's a family in relation to, you have tough times that you work through. Even this call tonight that I referred to, I let it off with, like, I've had conversations with my family that have arisen through some of the stuff that's recently happened. You're my family. Why wouldn't we have this conversation as well? And so I think the other thing is you care about more than the wrestling. So what we try to talk a lot is wrestling's a vehicle to really build strong character traits. I think you might have said it before that wrestling taught you a lot of things that you use to this day. And everyone says that. And so for us, we like focus on it. We actually have a whole manual. It's called the Higher Standard Manual, where we work on character traits, not specific to wrestling, specific to life if you want to be successful. And so when you start talking about building the whole individual, and it's not just about wrestling and winning, I think you build something better than a sports team. And Princeton does something weird too. I can't explain it. It's the hardest thing in recruiting. These kids they're just differently connected to the place. And I even hate saying it. It sounds so sales pitchy, like this place is special. And I hate saying things like that. But it really is. How it's set up, they almost all live on campus. It's just a really neat thing. And that helps build our community too. So it's pretty cool.
I think that, wrestling, the big, if you remember Vision Quest, I got news for you, Otto. Wrestling is not a team sport. When you're out on that mat, you're out there by yourself. I thought a lot about that, and I'm thinking, you know what? When I wrestled for Kearney in 1986, it was a team sport because we were so close. But I could see how it could not feel like a team sport if you don't have that, what you're just talking about, that family, where these guys, they're on the buses together, they're sweating together, they have these goals that they set together. And, but what's your take on that? Do you see wrestling ultimately as it's obviously a combination, individual sport, team sport, but do you, as a coach now, I would imagine, do you solely see it as a team sport?
No, I see. It depends on the individual. Some individuals are more into the team aspect than others. I think that we actually, we have this family thing, but what we say is usually what's best for the individual is best for the team. And we take a very individualistic approach to our program. That everyone doesn't have to practice every single day. There might be a day where a kid looks off to me. Maybe he filled out his thing and he's kind of down, where I pull him over to the side and I say, hey, I don't think you should be here today. And he might go, oh, I want to be here. And I'll be like, nah, you need to go home. And so it's a little individualistic. What I'll say, though, I just kind of thought about your other question about building family and working together. We have a really strong vision and a lofty goals. I mean, we did this my second year. I realized pretty quickly that winning in wrestling matches and building a team isn't about like teaching wrestling holds. It's about building your organization. So actually, like, I was a business major, but I started reading the Harvard Business Review, and there's a lot of good stuff about organizational transformation. And one of the first things we did as a program is we did this exercise where you create a vision, you create your core values, and you have this big audacious goal. And we went through that process with the team. And so what happens is you get this vivid description of what you want the program to be. And it's really not like maybe you're going to reach it, maybe you won't. It's sort of a guiding star. And everyone wants to work towards that ideal of what you want the program to look like. And what I think, and this comes back a little bit to us, often we have these senior speeches and they kind of speak to this a little bit, is as a unit, we talk about that vision and they're all on board for what we're trying to do. We start in the recruiting process with that vision of what we want the program to be. And so I think working together for that common good to reach that specific goal really bonds a team. What bonds them even more is when they see success and they're getting closer to it, right? There's setbacks along the way, but as long as you're still kind of creeping this way, I think that really solidifies the group. Where it's challenging is if you go like this a little bit, and now it's, is this really what we should be doing? Right. And that's where leadership really has to kick in. It's easy when things are going well and you're winning and stuff like that. But I think sometimes you could take a dip and it's like you got to step in and get them really focused on headed towards that guiding star again. But I think having that spot to shoot for as a group really brings people together too.
That's great. My experience with wrestling and the life lessons that I personally did take away from it, one of them was just this simple concept that I could sum up in 3 words, which is win the position. Yeah. And, and I think, and I don't know if that's a term that you use. I just remember I heard it first from a coach on a wrestling match, and it might have even been Steve Rivera, where he talked about winning the position. And, you have 2 wrestlers that are on their feet, one shoots in, somebody has to win that position. But as soon as that position's over, now you have to work on winning the next position. Is that the type of thing that you work with your team? Was, hey, you know what? The end of a failed strategy is the beginning of a new strategy type of concept.
For sure. There's a lot. You're hitting on a lot of really great things there. And I think with that statement, win the position is great. We talk about, I think you heard it, find a way to win. Yeah. What that really means, I think find a way to win is a little different than win the position. So win the position is the position and just be in that moment. That's what that's about. Be in that moment, figure out how to work through that position to get what you want in the end. What high school kids don't get, and maybe a little bit lower level athletes, is winning the position can take a long time. And sometimes winning the position is being willing to go one more second longer than the other guy's willing to defend or continue with his attack. Oftentimes people think it's like I hit high crotch, I grab other leg and I take him down and it's a 2-second thing, where at the higher levels that might take 30 seconds to get through that position. Right. So win the position is a wonderful term. I love that. And we say something similar to that. I think we might even say win the position. Find a way to win is a little different. Find a way to win is you're in a position you're not really sure what the heck's happening. So it's an uncomfortable position. You're put in in a compromising spot. And then we use this for life a lot too. The coaches, we kind of joke about it. Everything we do, your back's to the wall. You got to find a way to win. And so that means just being in the moment again. And now you got to be super creative. You got to kind of tactfully find your way to a new position where you're now going to win. Or you work your way. It's unfamiliar, and you work your way to familiarity, and then you can win. And so I think those are great terms. I love that, win the position. I think both are, though, being in the moment and dealing what's in front of you. 1, the problem. 2, the second one, find a way to win, is not knowing really the problem or the position. So I love that statement. I think it's mostly about solving a problem and being in the moment.
That's great. Listen, I just want to end with asking you this question, because now I'm the coach of my boys' baseball team. I've been coaching them for years in baseball. And as the coach, I step on that field and I take off dad hat and I put on a coach hat. And sometimes you have to wear them both. Like today when I'm out there alone with my 2 boys, my son Nicholas, at one point, who's, he's 9, just got upset. I thought he was more concerned about something with baseball. And I said, "What's the matter?" And I'm, got the stern, what the coach look, what are you crying about? And he's not crying, but that kind of vibe is happening between us. And then I just took that off and I put the dad hat on, go, "Come here. Come here." And he comes over to me. I'm sitting on the bucket, and I said, "Sit right here." And he sits on my lap, and I said, "What's wrong?" And he starts talking about something about a video game. It has nothing to do with baseball. And then I remind myself, I'm talking to a 9-year-old little boy right now.
Yeah.
The reason I'm bringing that up is because as a coach and as a dad, I'm trying to find that way to balance things. I know your daughter wrestled, right? Didn't she just win a state championship?
Yeah. And my son wrestles too.
And your son.
So he's 12.
So this is a 2-part question. One is do you find yourself having a difficult time balancing coach and dad with them, or do you just take the coach hat off and just be the dad?
I do both. It's tough. I can relate with what you're saying. And your kids are different. I'm sure your other son's a lot different than. Yep. So my daughter, she just wants wrestling. So we literally wrestle almost every day, her and I, showing her technique. My son's kind of like into wrestling, and then he's not into wrestling. So, but he's actually coming around a little bit too. So they're just so different. I'm mostly dad, but sometimes I get really frustrated when they're not listening. They could just be a huge pain in the ass, to be honest with you, because I'm their dad. Where as a coach, the kids relate to me differently. Where right. they it's like there's a level of difference when I'm with them. But they're both. Here's the thing: the most amazing thing about this whole quarantine thing is we started right away, just as a family routine, that we would work out together, me, my son, and my daughter. So every morning we wake up at 7, or we work. I get up a lot earlier, but they get up at 7, and we work out as a family. And so 6 days a week we've been doing that, and it's been this amazing, amazing thing. I know that I'm going to cherish it I would have never had this time with them. I know I'm going to cherish it for the rest of my life. I think they might cherish it. Who the heck knows? But yeah, so our relationship has grown so much stronger. We bicker and stuff sometimes during it. They're not always pretty. Those morning workouts, sometimes we kind of get at each other, but it's been really phenomenal. It's tough. I don't know. Hey, if you figure it out, you let me know.
No, listen, do it. Parenting's tough. It is tough because I'm always wondering, am I doing it the right way? See, I'm a little bit, when I coach one of my teams, for example, 12 players on the team, and I will be more difficult on my own kids than I am on the other 11, and it's because I don't want them to think, oh, this is easy, my dad's the coach. So I'll say things to my players. I'll say every single day, every practice like you're trying to make the team. Practice like you're trying to earn your position. Now, they're still young. I move them around a lot. It's not like I have a starter and a captain and all that stuff. This is everybody plays infield, everybody plays outfield, everybody will sit on the bench. However, you will have the kid that earns more time at shortstop, or the ability or that opportunity to pitch a little bit more because they're putting in more time. But, I want my kids to know your dad's the coach. That doesn't mean you get a free ride. You have to work harder. So if they don't, sometimes I feel like I'm a little harder on them, so they know that when their dad's not the coach, they'll be prepared for that. And I don't know if I'm doing it right. But I will ask you this. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's so funny with my son. Like at wrestling, he won't listen to me. So what happens is I'm the coach of the youth team. Me and Joe Dubuque and a bunch of the dads. It's really fun actually. We have actually a good youth team. So I'll go over and say, hey Joe, you got to go help Atticus with this thing. And Chase, his son, is more willing to listen to him, but he listens to me too. So like Joe will go work with my son and I'll work with Chase. So it's just kids are like, you got to figure them out. It's my daughter though. I can go hard on her. I can be tough on her. But yeah, he's a little different. Go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, that's all right. I had read somewhere that they say as a parent, now take the coach out of it, now you're just a parent. My kids play basketball too, as an example. I don't know basketball. I never played basketball. I don't try to coach basketball. What I like is sitting in the stands and watching them play because there's no stress on me as the coach. But I read somewhere where they said the best thing you could say to your child on the way home, instead of critiquing them and saying you should have done this, should have done that, is I really enjoy watching you play. And the truth is, that's pretty much all I say to my kids about basketball, because I'm not their coach. But at the same time, what I find is I really do enjoy watching them play, because I'm not sitting here wanting my kid to be the best kid on the court. The reason I want them playing basketball is just to keep in shape and have some fun. That's it. So for me to sit back there and just enjoy them out there with their friends, laughing, smiling. And sometimes I think if I were to ask them, what do you like better, basketball or baseball? I don't know for sure if they would say baseball or basketball. They're great baseball players. They're average basketball players. But because of that one thing of how I treat them, maybe I'm a little more difficult with them here. What do you think about that advice for a parent? Because wrestling parents,
Yeah.
I'm sure, could be in the stands. As a coach, you might look at them and say, man, if they would just stay out of their own child's head, their child could probably be a much better wrestler.
Yeah.
And I think all coaches can say that.
With my son, it's totally all positive. When we leave, I just know him, and like, it's all like, man, you did great, you did this good, even if he didn't win. It's about being positive with him. With my daughter, she wants the critique basically, but again, it all has to be positive too. Like I almost always start with, hey, you did a great job. She'll actually get mad at me because she doesn't think she did, and she thinks I'm lying to her. So it's like, but I always, and to your point, I really do like watching them compete. Like you said, I do love it. I mean, it's just a neat thing to see your kids, especially for watching them wrestle. It's really neat for them to see them get a lot out of the sport. And so I totally agree. It's just, you got to enjoy the moments. And I think too, I had success, so I don't really care like what they do. I think it's their thing totally. Like,
yeah.
It's not my thing. I think sometimes parents may attach their own self-worth to like what the kid is doing, which really messes me up. Like, I don't get that at all. Like for me, I'm like, this is her thing. This is his thing. I did it already. And I've been lucky that way. So I feel fulfilled in my own competitive career. But for them, it's just like, it's for you. I'm not connected to that. So yeah, that's the way I kind of view it.
I love that. I love that. One of the things that I've even said this to my kids multiple times. Last week, here we are, we're out practicing. It's just me and my two boys in one field. In the next field over is a professional baseball player that lives in our community that plays for the Texas Rangers. And he's there with his brother. And his brother's doing a little batting practice with him. He's just hitting. And I bring my kids together and I sit them down and I say, what do you see in all these other fields right now? What do you see? And they said, baseball fields. I said, yeah, who's on them? Nobody except over here. I said, right. I said, you have a professional baseball player over here doing the same thing you are. I said, now I want you to understand something. I don't care if you guys ever play baseball when you grow up. It has nothing to do with baseball. What I care about is you understand that to be great at anything, you have to be putting in the work and doing what you're doing right now, because nobody else is out here doing it. The only guy that is doing it plays professionally, and you. So remember this lesson is because what I'm trying to teach them is work ethic. Quite honestly, I hope at some point my kids turn to me and say, Dad, I want to wrestle. It's because I know what it did for me. But at the same time, I'm still trying to instill that same mindset of win the position and put the time in. And like you said, if you put the preparation in, then you have a better chance of winning. That doesn't guarantee the victory, but it just makes you more prepared to be able to potentially have the victory.
I think in anything too, I think it's simple. What happened at Lehigh? So I always had this thing, and I think that it's so simple, but it's so effective. Just just do a little bit more than everyone around you. Literally, like I tried to be the last person to leave practice every day. That was it. So at practice ended, I would do some more things. So what happened was I wasn't in a room with state champs and stuff in high school. So I worked really hard. So when I thought state champs did so much, I thought like they must be doing so much more than me because I can't beat them. The biggest epiphany for me to make growth was when I got into a room with a bunch of state champs and realized I could work harder than these guys. Then it hit me like it was like instantly I gained so much confidence. But I always did that, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know how. Even on my team, there doesn't happen a lot. Like I'm surprised that people don't stay a little longer in practice. I think anywhere in life, if like you talk about business or something like that, one is you do the right thing. Two is you just do a little bit more. That's how you get ahead. And so for me, I tried to stay longer to practice than anybody else. And it was everything too. I would try to sneak in workouts so the teammates didn't know it. So I just measured myself to who I was with. Right. And if I did more than them, it gave me the confidence to be successful. I think I do it in coaching too. I have weird things that I do in my head when I think about other coaches in the country and just doing a little bit more. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of add on. I thought about that when you said your kids were in the field, and the pro baseball players out there, nobody else is. Yeah. That's a powerful tool to have in your quiver.
Well, I'm telling you, it was a special moment for me. I said I have to take advantage of this moment right now and let them process this. Yeah. Because, like I said, when I was younger, I didn't know. We spent the summers down the shore. Then we went up to Kearney, where I wrestled for Kearney High School, during the season. And had I known you could wrestle year round, maybe I would have been one. And nobody was really doing it back then. There was only a few, but the few that were doing it were definitely significantly better than those of us who weren't. Because when I'm kind of shaking some of the cobwebs and the rust off at the beginning, they've been doing it for months, and it showed. But man, what a great sport. I'm really, really thankful that you took time to come on with us today and share some of your wisdom. I mean, I took a lot away from this, and I'm so grateful for that. But is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I really appreciate being on here. I really, I really love what we're doing at Princeton. And I'm glad you follow us, because it's a pretty cool ride as we really do work to be one of the best college athletic turnarounds of all time. I'm really glad you gave me an opportunity here to kind of talk about some of the leadership traits that I think are necessary to get a program or an organization. It doesn't really matter if it's a sports program or anything. Right. How to have organizational leadership to build what you're trying to do. So it's been fun. It's been awesome, man. I loved it.
Well, thank you. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to do with this particular podcast, is let people know you may not even follow wrestling. Maybe you never wrestled a day in your life, but you're leading a team in whatever arena or field that you're in, and you could still learn from someone who's doing what you guys are doing over there at Princeton, and you specifically. So thanks for sharing your insight, Coach Ayres. I appreciate it. I'm going to be following you. Good luck with the upcoming season.